Okay, Rogue, I'm gonna need you to make me a stealth check.
Oh, sure. I'm legendary in stealth.
Alright, now give me a society check to identify your surroundings.
You got it. I'm a master in society.
Okay, there's an altar in front of you. I'm gonna need a religion check.
Oh, easy. Master in religion, baby.
What? Okay, it's giving off faint magical energy. Roll me Arcana.
No problem. I'm legendary in Arcana.
Why?
Ooh, a 19.
Rogues. They can do literally everything and can be the best at it. Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome one and all to the deep dive into the Rogue class of Pathfinder Second Edition. Now, if you look at my past deep dives, I had a pattern going. We were going alphabetically through the core rulebook, as well as tackling the Advanced Player's Guide classes. Well, in our stream last week, a crazy donation train happened, begging for the Rogue class deep dive to be next. Well, I see you, I hear you, and here we are. Seriously though, to everyone who has pledged on Patreon and donated in my streams, you guys are absolutely incredible. This wouldn't have happened for another few months without you. So hey, if you guys were excited to see the Rogue class dive come up, thank everybody who donated in the streams. But let's not waste any more time. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, blah blah blah. You've heard it all before. Me saying it isn't going to make you do it, unless it does. Let's talk about the Rogue. Rogues are more complicated than you would think. In fact, I would argue that Rogues are the single most complicated martial class in the entire system. First off, let's start confusing. Their key ability score would be Dexterity, but it actually changes depending on your subclass. I'll go into more detail a little bit later, but Rogues can actually choose Dexterity, Intelligence, Charisma, or Strength as their key ability score. It's absolutely insane. Strike that. I just double checked. Rogues can choose any score except Constitution as their key ability score depending on their subclass. Already, this is the most flexible class we've ever seen when it comes to ability scores. It gets worse. They're your pretty average martial hit points, 8 plus Constitution modifier. They're really good with their proficiencies too. Expert in Perception, Reflex saves, and Will saves, and only trained in Fortitude saves. Now buckle up, because this is where the Rogue really gets ludicrous. At level 1, they begin trained in Stealth, a skill from their background of course, a skill from their subclass, sometimes multiple skills from their subclass, and then 7 plus their intelligence in additional skill proficiencies. Needless to say, Rogues are the skill junkie of Pathfinder Second Edition. When it comes to weapons, they're a little more limited. They're restricted only to simple weapons and some very specific martial weapons. They can also only wear light or medium armor, which can actually be pretty rough if you choose Strength or something as your key ability score instead of Dexterity. Alright, let's go ahead and get into what will be the next 20 minutes of explanation. The Rogue subclasses. Rogue subclasses are easily the most expansive, diverse, and good subclasses in the entire game. If I were ranking classes based only on subclasses, Rogue would easily take first place. This is because every subclass actually functions completely differently. Most classes have a set, your subclass gives this, 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 and this, and those things change depending on the subclass. Not with the Rogue. Rogue subclasses give whatever they want, however much they want, in completely different ways. Let's just go ahead and jump right into them, and I'll explain. Starting off with the Ruffian, also known as the Strength Rogue. If you pick this subclass, you may pick Strength as your key ability score. It's important to note that no matter what subclass you pick, you can still take Dexterity as your key ability score. The alternate choice is always an option. For the Ruffian, that option is Strength. If you are a Ruffian and you are wielding a simple weapon that deals 1d8 or less damage, specifically the weapon's damage die is a d8, it can obviously deal 2d8, 3d8, what have you, as long as it deals a d8 or less in damage die, you can inflict sneak attack with that weapon, even if it doesn't have the finesse and agile traits. We'll go into sneak attacks a little bit later when we start covering the base class features, but sneak attack basically allows you to deal bonus damage to flat-footed creatures, and usually it has to be done with something like a dagger or a rapier, something agile and finesse. If you're a ruffian, you can do it with a club. On top of that, a level 1 ruffian who critically hits with one of these weapons, a simple weapon that's a d8 or less, also applies the critical specialization. Now, critical specialization doesn't add that much to your effectiveness, but it's almost impossible otherwise to gain access to crit specialization at first level. On top of that, the Ruffian is also trained in intimidation, trained in medium armor, and anytime their light armor expertise goes up from a class feature, so does their medium armor. So the Ruffian is very clearly the up, rough and tumble, in your face, beat you down, and if they're flanking you, they will beat you up and take your lunch money with all that bonus sneak attack damage with a club. Or even worse, a long spear. Worth noting, a Ruffian with a long spear can sneak attack with 5 feet of reach. It's gross. The Scoundrel is the face man, and as such can take Charisma as their key ability score. They also automatically become trained in Diplomacy and Deception. This is terrifying because this rogue is now good at telling the truth and lying. On top of that, their feint action is actually upgraded compared to everyone else in the game. If they ever normal succeed a feint action, the target is flat-footed until the end of your next turn, which means any attacks you land between then and the end of your next turn are sneak attacks. Oh, and should you critically succeed your feint, they're flat-footed to all melee attacks, even from your fighter. Now, granted, flanking isn't usually that difficult in Pathfinder 2e, but if you've got 3 people in that awkward triangle where nobody can quite flank perfectly, you can just critically succeed a feint, and then they're flat-footed to everyone. Overall, this does give a little bit less than the Ruffian, but that's because being the face in itself is so powerful. Getting the 2 skill proficiencies and charisma as a key ability score when you're not a spellcaster is incredible. The Thief is probably the most divisive subclass when it comes to the Rogue, not because of it in particular, but because of what it has taken from the rest of the system. If you're not aware, in Pathfinder Second Edition, you can never add dexterity to damage, no matter what weapon you're using. Well, the Thief can do exactly that. If the Thief attacks with an agile or finesse weapon, they can add their dexterity modifier both to the attack roll and to damage. They're trained in thievery, and that's it. Some people love the Thief, some people despise the Thief. A lot of people resent the Thief because it has taken that dex to damage ability that they used to be able to put on, a dexterity-based fighter or a monk. But now that it's only locked behind the Thief, there are people who are sort of fighting and not happy. But it's also hard to recommend the Thief at the same time. That's all it gets. Trained in thievery and dex to damage. That is all. They also have to take dexterity as their key ability score. They do not get a choice in the matter. So this is arguably the weakest rogue subclass, but it has one of the most unique abilities that everybody else wants. Over in the Advanced Player's Guide, they added 2 more subclasses to the rogue because they needed it. Even in the core rulebook, rogues were already one of the most interesting classes with their 3 choices of subclass. Now they have 5. The Eldritch Trickster, even though it sounds like it should be complicated, really kind of isn't as long as you understand the archetype system. At level 1, when you make an Eldritch Trickster rogue, you can take any multi-class archetype of any spellcasting class. You could take a wizard archetype, sorcerer, oracle, cleric, druid. Any kind of spellcasting archetype is fair game. This basically gives you 2 cantrips from whatever class you picked, and you can set your key ability score to the spellcasting ability score of the class you chose. This means, as a rogue, if you go Eldritch Trickster and take the cleric archetype, you can be a rogue with wisdom as your key ability score. This is how rogues can take almost anything but con as their key ability score. Wisdom, charisma, or intelligence, depending on the class you pick for your archetype, it can be any of them. Or you can just stick with dex and be weird. On top of that, the level 4 feat Magical Trickster can be taken at level 2 only by this subclass. This basically allows you to perform sneak attacks with spell attacks. Oh. And finally, probably one of the hardest rogue subclasses to actually play, but also a really cool one, is the Mastermind. The Mastermind uses the Recall Knowledge action offensively along with gaining its normal benefits. If you successfully recall knowledge on a creature, that creature's flat-footed to you for 1 round. If you critically succeed, it is flat-footed against you for 1 minute. Say it with me, 1 minute is a full encounter. You're always trained in society, and you can pick any of the 4 magical skills to also become trained in. That's Arcana, Occultism, Religion, or Nature. You pick intelligence as your key ability score, and you're done. This thing is really hard to use well, and you need to make sure you're recalling knowledge whenever you can on new enemies. Whew boy, but if it works out, especially if you get that critical success, have fun. And that is all of the rogue subclasses so far in the game. How about we talk about some class features now, starting with the obvious sneak attack. Sneak attack is pretty simple. If you ever attack a flat-footed creature, whether that be from flanking, being grabbed, or you yourself being hidden when you attack them, you deal an extra 1d6 damage when you hit them. The caveat is that this must be done with an agile or finesse melee weapon, or any ranged weapon. However, if the weapon is being thrown, it needs to be an agile or finesse thrown weapon like a dagger. At levels 5, 11, and 17, this bonus damage increases to 2d6, 3d6, and 4d6. So shockingly, sneak attack is not where you're going to be getting most of your damage compared to some rogues in other systems. In Pathfinder 2e, the most you're going to get from your sneak attack in the base class feature is 4d6. Rogues also have surprise attack, a really cool way to get your sneak attack off even if you don't have the advantage. If you roll high enough on your initiative and you happen to roll deception or stealth, then any creature in the order that has not acted yet is flat-footed to you, meaning they have -2 to armor class, and you can sneak attack them right there even if they're not flanked, they're not grabbed, you're not hidden. You can just walk up and stab them and it hurts extra hard. Rogues get class feats just like any other martial at levels 1, 2, and every even level after, but where rogues really stand out is their skill feats. Now usually, I overlook this when I'm talking about the other classes. I say skill feats, moving on. Rogues are different, because rogues get a skill feat every single level. They will have 20 skill feats by level 20. Absolutely insane. What's that? The rogue's not strong enough? Ugh, let's give them a skill increase every level too. Why not? Wouldn't that be a... Rogues get skill increases every level too. Along with getting double the skill feats, rogues also get double the skill proficiency of any other class in the game, except for a couple like the Swashbuckler and the Investigator. But this still means, over the course of levels 1 to 20, you can increase 20 distinct skills, which means seeing a rogue with 5 legendary proficiencies at level 20 is not hard to do. At 3rd level, rogues also get deny advantage, which means any creature that is flanking them does not actually inflict flat-footed so long as the rogue is a higher level. This also works if the creature is hidden or undetected. General feats, ability boosts, ancestry feats, but at 5th level, we get weapon tricks. Weapon tricks is pretty much just simply expert proficiency with all the different weapons that rogues wield, as well as the crit specialization for those weapons. Level 7 is one of the biggest power spikes when it comes to the rogue in combat, increasing to master proficiency in both reflex saves and perception, and getting weapon specialization, which at this level will be adding 2 damage to all of their attacks. Level 9 is a total game changer for rogues, because Debilitating Strike is just a brand new tool they can use in their kit for a free action. Effectively, if they are ever able to sneak attack a target, they can now inflict penalties at no cost. There are feats that expand this list, but any rogue of level 9 or higher, when they successfully sneak attack someone, can reduce their movement speed by 10 feet or inflict enfeebled 1. Either of these effects last until the end of your next turn. And guess what? On your next turn, if you manage to debilitate them again, it restarts the cooldown. Isn't that great? They also increase their fortitude saves to expert, and at level 11 increases their class DC to expert. Level 13 already sees the rogue hitting legendary in reflex saving throws, and they can no longer critically fail reflex saving throws. On top of that, if they normal fail against a damaging effect, they take half damage. Level 13 is another power spike with legendary perception, master weapon proficiency, and expert in light armor. Though keep in mind, up until this point they've only been trained in their armor, so rogues are incredibly easy to hit. At 15th level they get double debilitation, because applying 1 debilitation with your debilitating strike wasn't debilitating enough. Also, the damage from weapon specialization is doubled with greater weapon specialization. Level 17 increases will saves to master and auto crit succeeds normal successful will saves. And level 19 gives master proficiency in light armor and the master strike free action. It works basically the same as Debilitating Strike, however you can't use both. Should you successfully sneak attack a creature and deal damage, you can apply Master Strike, which causes them to make a Fortitude saving throw. Should they critically succeed, nothing happens. Should they succeed, they are enfeebled 2 until the end of your next turn. Should they normal fail, they are paralyzed for 4 rounds. And should they critically fail, you can choose for them to be paralyzed for 4 rounds, unconscious for 2 hours, or killed. Your choice. Now keep in mind, this is a level 19 feature, and it has the incapacitation trait. So, if the creature is a higher level than the rogue, they treat their saving throw as 1 success stage higher. But still, this has no cooldown. The only thing stopping you from using this is it can only be used on the same creature once per day. So if you're fighting a horde of 5 high-level bandits, boop, Master Strike, boop, Master Strike, boop, as long as you're targeting different bandits, boop, Master Strike. That is so cool and such an awesome payoff for getting to max level as a rogue. Oh! And now, 30 minutes into recording, we are at the feats. Did I mention the rogue is complicated? Overall, level 1 isn't incredibly exciting for a rogue when it comes to feats, but we start with Nimble Dodge, which is really good. It's a reaction to increase your AC by 2 if you see an attack coming. It's important to note that this triggers when you are targeted for an attack. You can't do this after the number has already been rolled unless you have a nice GM, in which case, do what you want. But yeah, this is effectively reactive shield to raise a shield, but you don't need a shield. Trapfinder is phenomenal for a dungeon crawling rogue adventurer. Basically, you're just really good at finding and avoiding and withstanding traps. You get a +1 to perception checks to find traps, to AC when targeted by traps, to saving throws when you need to save against a trap. They're phenomenal. Also, even if you're not actively searching for traps, the GM needs to roll a secret check for you, because you're always searching for traps, even when you're not trying. Also, even a level 1 trap finder can attempt to disable a trap that is locked behind the master proficiency requirement, even if they don't have master. And if they reach master, they can disable legendary traps with a +2. This is an amazing feat and it's level 1, but it's only useful if your campaign has traps. What was I talking about? Rogue feats at level 1 aren't very good. God, why don't I script these? I will say Twin Feint is not overly impressive. It's 2 actions for 2 attacks. What is nice though is that the target is always flat-footed against the second attack. So even though it's at a multiple attack penalty, if you're using an agile weapon, since the opponent's flat-footed, it's only a net -2 on the second strike. And if you happen to hit, you get to deal your sneak attack damage. Phenomenal. This is pretty pointless if the target is already flat-footed, but hey, if you're going toe-to-toe with someone, this is a pretty solid choice. The only requirement is you have to obviously have 2 weapons. I bit my lip. I don't like biting my lip when I'm recording, but it happens every time. And your next is really satisfying, but can often not come up if you're just unlucky with your dice rolls. Should you ever personally drop an enemy to 0 hit points yourself, as a reaction, you can glance at another target and intimidate them with a +2. If you reach legendary proficiency with intimidation, this doesn't even cost a reaction. It's free. So this is really good. The big problem I have is that you have to reduce an enemy to 0 hit points. I think it would be cool if anyone on your team reduced them to 0 hit points and you're like, oh yeah, you see that wizard's fireball that just ignited your friend? He'll do it again, I swear, intimidation. I like that idea that you can use your allies as weight behind your intimidation, whereas, you're not even guaranteed to get a kill in a fight. You can do all the damage you want, but if they're left at 1 hit point and the monk breathes on them to kill them, well, you can't use your next. Kind of unfortunate. And the APG adds overextending feint. This effectively gives you a different effect for your feint action. Instead of making your target flat-footed with your feint, you give them a -2 to the next attack roll made against you, or all attack rolls made against you. If you critically succeed, this only lasts until the end of your next turn. The problem is, you would probably want to take this on a scoundrel rogue. You have the trained in deception from your subclass, you have the charisma as your key ability score, it all kind of comes together. The problem is that this feat, if you activate these effects, disable the bonus you get from your subclass. If you read the feat closely, you can use the following success effects instead of any other effects that would occur when you faint. So effectively, you trade away your flat-footed bonus effect from being a scoundrel for just this effect. So unfortunately, the effect that buffs up the feint action is not useful for the subclass that wants to use the feint action. Kind of unfortunate. It would be cool if specifically the Scoundrel, maybe it would be too overpowered, but if specifically the Scoundrel could apply both. So if they feint, they give the target -2 to attack rolls and -2 to flat-footed. That'd be really cool, especially because this only affects attacks against you. That would be a really neat combo. Plant Evidence is one of the most flavorful rogue feats in the entire game, and you cannot tell me otherwise. For a single action, so long as you have the Pickpocket skill feat, you can plant evidence on a person. You can reverse pickpocket with a thievery check against their deception DC. Even better than that, if you are a ruffian, you can do this as a free action if you successfully shove somebody. So you can, shove them and then secretly slide something into their chest pocket or something. It's so cool! And Tumble Behind makes you an acrobat. Literally, the acrobat archetype basically gets the same ability. If you successfully tumble through a target, they're flat-footed until the end of the turn. Cool. Useful. Looking at level 2 feats with Brutal Beating, and I'm on the fence about this one. Brutal Beating effectively gives you a free weapon rune. There is a weapon rune known as Fearsome, where if you ever critically strike a creature, that creature becomes Frightened 1. No saving throw, nothing they can do about it. Brutal Beating is the same effect. So on one hand, you're getting a free rune on your weapon that doesn't take up a rune slot, and you just have it forever, regardless of what weapon you're wielding. The downside is rogues don't have the highest critical strike chance. They're on par with other martials, so if you roll high enough, it will happen, but it's also possible for this to never take effect. This is really, really strong if you're fighting lower level enemies. If you're fighting a bunch of bandits with a lower armor class, you're going to get a lot of use out of this. If you're fighting one large dragon with an insane armor class and you don't roll a nat 20, it probably won't do anything. Distracting Feint is a really cool combo with your wizard friend's Fireball. Only the Scoundrel Rogue can take this, but now, whenever you successfully feint against a target, they also take a -2 to Perception and Reflex saves. Minor Magic is a feat I somehow didn't know existed until last week, and it's amazing! You just get 2 cantrips. Pick a tradition, take 2 cantrips, Charisma's your spellcasting modifier, done. Don't need to take an archetype, don't need to do anything with that, you just have magic. Mobility sort of gives you an upgraded step action. If you ever stride half your speed or less, you don't provoke reactions. This means that instead of stepping 5 feet, spending an action on that, and then moving, you can actually stride, we'll say you have a movement speed of 30 feet, you can effectively move 15 feet without provoking a reaction, which is incredible, especially if you're fighting creatures with reach, who also have attacks of opportunity. A 5-foot step might not get you out of their reach, but as a rogue, you can move 15 feet back, no reactions. Solid feat. Quick Draw. It's Quick Draw, it's amazing, it's one action to draw and attack, it can save your bacon in ambushes. Unbalancing Blow is, again, one of those really good feats if you're going 1v1 with someone. Whenever you critically strike a target, they are flat-footed against you until the end of your next turn, which is a long time. That's a potential 5 more attacks against them being flat-footed. The reason I say it's important for 1v1 is because usually you'll be flanking with your allies, so they'll already be flat-footed. I feel like 9 times out of 10, this is not going to be that effective unless your party is split around a battlefield and you have to hold your own. But if you're making a toe-to-toe fighting kind of combat-style rogue, this is fantastic. Clever Gambit is a little too limiting to be worth it in my opinion. As a reaction, if you've recalled knowledge successfully on a creature and you critically hit them, you may stride or step for free, and these actions don't provoke reactions from only that creature. So, if you've successfully recalled knowledge of them, and you critically strike and then stride, another creature next to you can make an attack of opportunity, but the creature you hit cannot. I feel like it's a little bit too specific, and everything needs to go perfectly to get a free stride action. Is it bad? No, but it's a bit much. Strong Arm. Range increment on thrown weapons increases by 10 feet. There's not really a build for a thrown weapon rogue, but, making sneak attacks with shurikens or daggers can be effective, and with most thrown weapons only having a range of 20 feet, increasing that to 30 feet is actually awesome. Underhanded Assault is a pretty solid feat. For 2 actions, you can sneak up to any enemy adjacent to an ally, and so long as you succeed your stealth check at a -2, you do get to make a melee strike against it as though you were hidden, meaning they're flat-footed against you. What's important to know about this feat is that you can make this sneak action even if they are observing you, which usually you would not be allowed to do. On top of that, you do not need your ally to be able to function. If they are perhaps restrained and unable to provide flanking, well, that doesn't matter. As long as they are adjacent to the enemy you've snuck up on, you can attack them with Underhanded Assault. Really solid. Battle Assessment is sort of an improved Recall Knowledge action. For a single action, you can roll Perception, secretly, against the Deception DC of a target enemy. Or the Stealth DC, if that's higher. The reason this roll is secret is because if you succeed, you get to know one piece of information about the enemy. What their highest weakness is, what their worst saving throw is, or one type of damage they are immune to. If you critically succeed, you get to know 2 of these. However, if you critically fail, the GM gets to tell you a piece of false information, which is why I love these secret checks, as telling you, yeah, definitely they're immune to acid. Trolls are immune to acid. Don't use that. I love secret checks, and I like this because it makes Recall Knowledge even better. Some of these are the kinds of things that I would like to give a character who has Recall Knowledge, especially if they roll high enough, but I like this because it is separate from Recall Knowledge. You can roll this even after using Recall Knowledge, and it's just a cool feat. Dread Striker's insane, especially if you're good at demoralizing targets. If a target is frightened, they're flat-footed to you. Simple as that. Absolutely nuts. Magical Trickster, I talked about this earlier, but if you ever perform a spell attack roll against a flat-footed target, you can apply your sneak attack damage to the spell. Really freaking cool. Also, if you can somehow attack multiple creatures with the same spell attack roll, you get to sneak attack all of them, but you can't sneak attack the same target more than once. Poison Weapon is kinda cool, because it's effectively 2 feats in one. On its own, it is a single action that as long as you are wielding a weapon, for a single action, you can draw a readied poison and apply it to your weapon all for 1 action. Incredibly economic action there. The problem that's supposed to be implied here, however, is that you apply it very quickly and messily, as the poison only lasts until the end of your next turn. If you miss all your attacks, or critically miss once before then, the poison gets wasted and disappears. But why I say this is like 2 feats in 1 is because it comes with a special, allowing you, the rogue, to prepare a number of minor injury poisons equal to your level each day. My voice is going up. Why? These potions are a very small amount of extra damage, but hey, they're free. If you're level 8 when you take this feat, you get 8 simple injury poisons you can apply per day, and those deal 1d4 bonus poison damage on an attack. Pretty nifty. Reactive Pursuit is a classic nice and sticky maneuver. As a reaction, should an enemy that is adjacent to you move away, you can move up to your stride speed with them. Though this one's a little bit weird. You can't actually move your full distance. If they can move farther than your stride, you actually can't move at all. If you have a 30-foot move speed, but they move 40 feet, you actually can't follow them. That's because the trigger is you being able to reach an adjacent space to the target with your stride action. I don't know why it's only if you can make it with them and you can't follow up to your speed, but that's kind of disappointing. Sabotag is awesome. Effectively, you can roll Thievery against an item that could theoretically be sabotagged. It says something like a short bow can be sabotagged, but a long sword or like a hammer or like a simple club can't really be sabotagged anyway. If you succeed this Thievery check, you deal damage to their weapon equal to twice your proficiency bonus with Thievery. If you critically succeed, you deal 4 times the damage. This is level 4 feat. So if you're level 8 and you're a master in Thievery with 6 plus 8 is 14 plus probably 4 from your dexterity, that's what? Plus 18, double the damage. That's 36 damage to a weapon for 1 action. And just for example, wood typically has 20 hit points and 5 hardness, which means this 36 damage would be reduced to 31, and you would snap their short bow in half, destroying it. That's such a cool ability. And now, I wonder how many comments I've received angry that I mispronounced sabotage. There's also Scout's Warning. You're effectively always scouting, and as a free action, if you roll Perception or Survival for initiative, all your allies get +1 to initiative. Neat! The problem is that it's still a +1 circumstance bonus, so really this just means nobody in your party needs to scout. It's neat, but is it worth a class feat? Head Stomp is brutal. For a single action, you make an unarmed strike against a prone target. Should you hit at all, they become flat-footed to all attacks until the end of your next turn. Not all attacks from you, all attacks, meaning all of your allies, including your spellcasters, have a flat-footed target to hit, even if they stand back up. They're still flat-footed. And it's called Head Stomp. Alternatively, for 2 actions, you can mug somebody. Make an attack roll, and if you hit and deal sneak attack damage, you can attempt to steal something from them, following the normal rules for stealing and using the thievery skill. How fun! Predictable is a level 4 feat that allows you to roll Perception to sense motive against a target's Deception DC. Should you critically succeed, you get +2 to both your armor class and saving throws against their effects until the start of your next turn. If you normal succeed, it's only a +1. If you fail, nothing happens. And if you critically fail, you actually take a -1 to AC and saving throws. Honestly, this isn't that amazing. It spends an action to get this bonus for 1 round. What is nice is you can do it whenever you want. So if you have nothing better to do that round, you don't necessarily want to kill them or you have no chance of actually hitting them, you could try to bulk yourself up by rolling high enough to get these bonuses to safety. So it's not bad. It's just niche. The harder they fall is hilarious. And I tell you again that the ruffian will beat you up and take your lunch money. The rogue trips a target. If they succeed, the target takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage. If you critically succeed, they take 1d6 bludgeoning damage plus sneak attack. You're literally just a high school bully tripping nerds in the hallway. God, do your own homework. Twin Distraction. If you took Twin Feint at first level, you can take this. You twin feint like normal with a normal first strike and then they're flat-footed against the second strike, and if both attacks hit, the target becomes stupefied 1 until the end of your next turn. This is a nice little anti-spellcaster maneuver, which is pretty cool. It also hurts will saving throws, so it's just really useful overall. Level 6's Gang Up unfortunately makes the previously mentioned Underhanded Assault almost useless. Underhanded Assault basically lets you get a flat-footed attack on a target just for being adjacent to an ally, even if the ally can't fight back. Gang Up is that as long as you and an ally are next to the same enemy and within reach to attack them, they're flat-footed to you. They're not flat-footed to your ally, but they're flat-footed to you. So if you and your fighter are right next to each other with a goblin in front of you, that goblin is flat-footed to you. Light Step lets you ignore difficult terrain. Plain and simple. Skirmish Strike is just another piece of fantastic action economy. It's 2 actions for 1 action, which you actually almost never see. You see plenty of 3s for 2s, but you almost never see 2 for 1s. You get to step and then strike, or strike and then step. Never underestimate the power of stabbing someone and then stepping 5 feet. Forcing them to take a move action to attack you is way more debilitating than it sounds. It might as well be stunning them 1. Twist the Knife is okay. For a single action, if you attack and successfully deal damage with a sneak attack, you can spend the following action to inflict persistent bleed damage equal to the number of sneak attack dice you have. So at level 6, you inflict 2 persistent bleed damage. Sure, this can add up over time, but likely it's not going to be amazing, and they'll probably recover after 2 or 3 applications, so I suppose you can think of it on average as like 1 extra action, deal 4 damage, but Analyze Weakness is incredible and makes the mastermind so much stronger. If you have successfully recalled knowledge and identified a creature, and you sneak attack them, you double your sneak attack damage. Oh, you critically hit them? Quadruple it. This means at level 6, if you have successfully recalled knowledge on a creature and you critically strike them, you will be dealing your weapon damage plus strength plus 8d6 at level 6. The mastermind is fun. And this isn't just for the mastermind. You can take this as any rogue. I'm just saying the mastermind will get the most use out of it. Anticipate Ambush is interesting. It's a new exploration action for the rogue, and should any enemies involved in an encounter be rolling stealth for initiative while you are anticipating ambush, they all get a -2 to their initiative rolls. This is okay, but I feel like it's a little too niche. I feel like being a permanent effect wouldn't even be that overpowered. You know, it's level 6, it's mid-level, but, you know, having all enemies who roll stealth against you take a penalty, that'd be an awesome feat. But having to move at half speed and not being able to do any other action on exploration is really limiting. Far Throw, a little bit more support for this weird thrown weapon rogue. For every range increment past the first, you only take a -1 to hit instead of -2. If you have strong arm from earlier on, then, you know, most weapons you can attack from 60 feet away, only at a -1 penalty. That's the same range as a short bow with a thrown weapon. Kinda cool. Shove Down is okay battlefield control. If you just successfully shoved a target, as a free action, you can attempt to trip them. Sounds really good on paper. The problem is that the trip will still be suffering from multiple attack penalty, giving it a -5 to the attempt. This is great control because you can shove them 5-10 feet away from you and then they fall prone, which could have its uses. The problem is that just those multiple attack penalties will stack up really, really fast, though when combined with something like Bully or whatever it was called, the harder they fall from earlier, this can be kind of cool. I think I would prefer it. It would make less sense, but I think I would prefer it if you could trip first and then shove, because the trip is the really important part of this. Moving them is a cool bonus, but ideally you want to knock them prone. Because you have to shove first, the trip will always be at the penalty. Watch Your Back can be a cool combination with the Intimidation skill and mages and spellcasters who know how to cast fear spells. For one action, you demoralize the target. Sorry, poor choice of words. You don't demoralize them, but you do roll Intimidation against their will DC. Should you succeed, they actually get a +2 to perception checks only when seeking you, but most importantly, they get -2 to will saves against fear effects. So if you combine this with your wizard casting the fear spell, this could have some awesome combinations. Blind Fight. You're not flat-footed to hidden creatures. You only need to roll a 5 or higher to successfully target hidden creatures. And if you're adjacent to an undetected creature, that creature automatically becomes only hidden, meaning you know it's there. Oh, also you can automatically target concealed creatures as well. You don't need to roll anymore. This is just a really good feat for fighting invisible enemies. Delay Trap is a really cool feat, and I kinda love it. As a reaction, if a trap gets triggered, you can instantly try to disable it by rolling a thievery check against its DC +5. Should you critically succeed, you get to delay the activation of the trap until the start or end of your next turn. You get to choose. If you normal succeed, you get to delay the activation of the trap until the start or end of your next turn. Whichever is worse, the GM decides. If you fail, nothing happens, and if you critically fail, you're flat-footed until the start of your next turn, which means if that trap is taking attack rolls on you, you now have a -2 to your AC against it. Good luck. Improved Poison Weapon isn't bad. Your daily poisons that you can prepare now add 2d4 damage instead of 1d4, and you don't lose your poisons whenever you critically miss anymore. Pretty good. Nimble Roll lets you use the +2 bonus to armor class from Nimble Dodge, and use it as a +2 to reflex saves instead. On top of that, if you Nimble Dodge and the attack misses or critically misses, or you Nimble Roll and the effect fails or critically fails, you get to stride 10 feet for free as part of this reaction. Keep in mind, this movement can trigger other reactions. Opportune Backstab is amazing. It's an attack of opportunity that only works if a creature is hit by one of your allies. So if your fighter clonks somebody on the head, you can spend your reaction to also stab them. So cool! Sidestep is equally as really so cool. As a reaction, if an attack targets you and misses or critically misses, you can choose to have the attack target any creature adjacent to you. Meaning if you want to be a jerk, you can push it onto your fighter. Or, if you want to be smart, you can push it onto another adjacent enemy. On top of that, the attacker actually re-rolls. So if they rolled a natural 1 when they attacked you, you can go, nyeh, target their friend, the attacker re-rolls, and would you look at that, it's a natural 20. Sly Striker is cool. Effectively, if you ever attack a creature that is not flat-footed and you successfully deal damage, you can apply a minor sneak attack and deal 1d6 bonus damage, like I said, even if they weren't flat-footed. As usual, this only works if you're using the agile or finesse weapon that works with sneak attack, and at level 14, this bonus damage increases to 2d6. Bullseye is, again, there's that support for a thrown weapon rogue, and I'm now biting my tongue for saying there's no build for thrown weapon, but the problem is it's still kind of weak. You spend a full action to give yourself +1 to attack and ignore the target's concealed condition on your next thrown weapon strike until the end of the turn. You can also ignore lesser or standard cover, or even reduce greater cover to standard cover. So in a perfect situation, if a target is behind standard cover, this gives you a net +3 to attack with your next thrown weapon strike, which is pretty good, I'm not going to lie. But otherwise, it's spending an action to gain +1 to hit. Is it bad? No, by no means. But it's fair. And if you've ever watched professional trading card games, you know that fair is never quite good enough. Inspired Stratagem is really unique, and I love it. At the beginning of the day, you talk to up to 4 allies. Once, over the course of that day for each ally, if they are about to roll a skill check or attack roll, you can spend your reaction to let them roll twice and take the higher result. This is fantastic. Give this to your entire party. This works up to a 5-man party. In fact, it's best in a 5-man party. And your fighter can roll with advantage, or your wizard can roll Arcana twice to identify that spell. It's really, really good, and you will instantly become everyone's best friend and say, I'm the bard now. Loner spell is hilarious. You need to be trained in at least one magical skill, which you're a rogue, you're going to be trained in all of them, and as long as you have a spellcaster on your team that can cast 3rd level or higher spells, well, at the beginning of the day, they can sacrifice one of their spell slots and give it to you. You are then able to cast this spell once, at any time during that day, using your class DC as your spellcasting modifier, or class DC -10 for your spellcasting attack roll bonus. This is insane and hilarious, and I love it because you can now give your rogue Fireball. That can only go well. Predictive purchase. I'm sure people have been waiting for me to get to this one because they know how I feel about Prescient Planner and Prescient Consumable, and I don't like it. If you don't know, Prescient Planner and Prescient Consumable means you can spend 1 minute rooting around in your bag once per so often after you've visited a store in the past day or whatever. And you can say, oh wait, I did buy this, and pull a healing potion out of your butt. Predictive purchase means you can do it for 2 actions instead of a minute. Now, I think this is a cool idea. I like being able to do that so much faster because you're a rogue and you're so prepared. I still don't like the feat, but I respect what it's doing. Ricochet stance. For 1 action, you get into a stance, and this might be the only stance that rogues get, but it's for throwing weapons, and as long as you're in this stance, all physical throwing weapons have returning. Again, saving you a rune slot on weapons. Not bad. Tactical entry is not as good as it sounds. For a free action, if you roll stealth for initiative, you can take a stride action, not a sneak action. What does this mean? Well, it means that if you rolled stealth for initiative and you were hidden, you can't sneak in and hide behind something to get into a better position. You have to stand up and walk out going, hi guys, I'm right here. Aren't I stealthy? Now I'm ready to fight, and you're out in the open. It's great for repositioning. If you were caught out while stealthing, this is great for backing out of there and getting out of the front line. But for the most part, I feel like this would have been really cool if you could sneak twice, which would be the same distance, but you can remain hidden. Striding means you instantly come out of stealth, and I'm not a big fan. Hoo boy, level 10. Let's get into unique debilitations. This is a whole string of feats available unique to each subclass, and each one gives additional options when you use the Debilitating Strike class feature. Starting off, the Thief Racket's Precise Debilitations just lets you do more damage. When you trigger Debilitating Strike, you can either cause the target to become flat-footed until the start of your next turn, or cause them to take an additional 2d6 damage from all of your attacks, even if they're not flat-footed. This is really good. Honestly, does come down to situation which one is better. If they're already flat-footed from being flanked, you take the additional precision damage. If you need them to stay flat-footed to keep sneak attacking, you take the flat-footed. Really good. Sneak Savant is stupid. If you ever normal fail on a sneak action, you succeed. You can still critically fail. But if you ever fail, you succeed. Now, what's important to note here is this is on sneaking specifically. Your initial hide action does still need to normal succeed in order to stay hidden. But this basically means that as long as you are hidden, sneaking will never reveal you unless you end up in the open or you critically fail. It's super safe, and honestly, it's not as broken as it sounds, but it's still really good. The Scoundrel Racket gets tactical debilitations. This is the Charisma Rogue, and when you debilitatingly strike somebody, you can either disable their reactions for a full round, or make it so they cannot flank with their allies. Both of these are really cool actions, and I really love all of the different debilitations that different rogues get, and being able to disable reactions or disable flanking is really cool, and no other class gets this kind of option. I guess some of the champion litanies do, but we don't talk about champions. As the Ruffian, you get vicious debilitations. You can either inflict Clumsy 1, reducing their Dex DCs all by 1, including armor class, or give them a weakness 5 to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing until the start of your next turn. Have I been saying start this whole time? It's till the end. These are really good feats. The Eldritch Trickster kind of gets the short end of the stick here with Eldritch Debilitations. You can either disable the target's step action or inflict Stupefied 1. Stupefied is really good as it does shut down spellcasters, but overall, meh. And the Mastermind one is a little bit strange. Their methodical debilitations have the same one as the Charisma, I almost said Bard, as the Charisma Rogue, which disables flanking for that creature, and they can disable the target's shield. The target no longer gains a bonus to armor class for raising a shield, and they can only gain bonus from greater cover, not standard or lesser. It's a weird one, definitely worded strangely and really specific, but it can have its uses. Basically, disabling cover from someone is kind of cool. What's that? You guys want more debilitating strike options? Well, here you go, critical debilitation. When you critically succeed on an attack that can apply debilitating strike, you get a new option. The target makes a fortitude save against your class DC. If they critically succeed, nothing happens. If they normal succeed, they're slowed 1. If they fail, they're slowed 2, both until the end of the next turn. If they critically fail, they are paralyzed until the end of your next turn. This is just permanent. It does have the incapacitation trait, so if you're fighting something that's a higher level than you, it will work 1 less. Nevertheless, all of your sneak attacks now come with a built-in minor slow spell on critical hits. Have fun. Fantastic Leap is something that most martial classes seem to get. For 2 actions, you can make a high or long jump and make a strike at any time during the action. Felling Shot for 2 actions allows you to make a ranged weapon attack, including a thrown weapon attack, against any flying creature. Should you hit it, they need to make a reflex save. Should they fail their reflex save, they drop up to 120 feet, unfortunately not taking any fall damage, but should they critically fail, they cannot leave the ground again until the end of your next turn, so they are stuck on the ground for 1 full round. Reactive Interference is really cool. You spend your reaction to cancel an enemy's reaction. If the enemy happens to be a lower level than you do this for free. If they are a higher level than you do need to make a successful attack roll against their armor class, and if you succeed, they lose their reaction. You do need to be adjacent to this creature to use this reaction. Spring from the Shadows is a fantastic feat, and I'm so sad it's level 12. For 1 action, if you are hidden, you can stride up to your speed, make an attack against a creature, and they're flat-footed against that attack. Simple as that. It's just a way to basically sneak attack someone from 30 plus feet away, depending on your move speed. Bloody Debilitation. I love that you need to be trained in medicine to take this, and of course you're going to be. You're a rogue. But that's another option for debilitating strikes. And from now on, whenever you successfully hit with debilitating strike, you can casually inflict 3d6 bleed damage. Not even as an extra action. It's just free. Preparation is really cool. You sacrifice one action to gain a second reaction. You can use that reaction however you want, but it disappears at the end of this round. So effectively, this is a fantastic way to use that awkward third action that a lot of people run into. Oh, I don't want to attack a third time, so don't. Use nimble dodge twice instead. Fantastic feat. Alright, I'm gonna go back in time and slap me for saying there's no support for a thrown weapon rogue. I had no idea what I was talking about. There's not really a build for a thrown weapon rogue. Ricochet feint. So long as you're in ricochet stance, you can perform feints against any creature within the first range increment of your throwing weapon, which, if you have strong arm, is going to be about 30 feet. So this just gives you a ranged feint instead of being melee. Really good. Defensive roll is a free action that can be used once every 10 minutes if an attack would bring you to 0 hit points. You simply take half damage from the triggering blow. Hopefully, this keeps you above 0 hit points. If you're already down to 2 or 3, this isn't going to do much for you. But if you've got 20 hit points and something hits you for 30, this will keep you up with 5. This is actually a really, really good feat. And you can do it every 10 minutes. That's once per encounter at least. Instant opening is a guaranteed successful feint. Plain and simple. You choose a target within 30 feet, and it's flat-footed to you until the end of your next turn. What can I say? It's really good. It makes it instant, easy sneak attacks forever. Forever. Leave an opening is a ridiculous combo with a fighter on your team. This is strictly made for a rogue fighter combo. If you critically strike a flat-footed target, then one ally adjacent to that target can take an attack of opportunity. This means your fighter with a greatsword can attack for free because you got a critical hit. This doesn't even use your reaction. This uses the fighter's reaction. This is just completely free, permanent upgrade to all of your critical hits. I hate this. And by hate, I mean obviously I love it, but God. It's nighttime now. I ran out of time to record the rest of this video, and it's now 1:30 in the morning. So let's finish this video. I figured this was kind of fitting. My girlfriend is asleep in the other room, so this is now a stealth challenge. Makes sense to put it in the rogue video. Sense the unseen is a really solid reaction. If you ever sense an area, as you usually would to find undetected creatures, even if you fail the seek check, you can spend your reaction and any undetected creature in that area instantly becomes hidden. Pretty solid. Stay down, honestly, is not that powerful. As a reaction, if an opponent who is prone next to you tries to stand up, you can make an athletics check against their fortitude DC, and if you succeed, their standing attempt fails and they need to stand again. Unfortunately, because this is a reaction, they can just stand up on their second action. You're basically sacrificing your reaction to cost them an extra action. However, if you combine this with the rogue feat preparation, you can do this twice on the same turn, and because they're reactions, both of them will be at your full bonus. With that combination, you can keep them on the ground, costing them 2 actions every turn so long as you keep succeeding your athletics check. And if you ever happen to critically succeed these athletics checks, they cannot stand up at all until their next turn. Blank Slate as a level 16 feat is absolutely insane. You need to be legendary in Deception, but by taking this feat, you become immune to any kind of magical detection, whether that be true sight, divination magic, anything. Even detect magic will not detect you or any magic items in your possession. You cannot be located, you cannot be scryed upon. You are invisible, at least in a magical sense. Now, compared to Blank Slate, Cloud Step is a little bit less impressive, though still pretty cool. On your turn, any stride action you take can go over any surface without giving any impact. You can run across thin air, a body of water, even a pressure-sensitive trap without triggering it. The only time you give impact to where you're standing is at the end of your turn, meaning if you end your turn over a thin air gap, you will fall down. But if you run 90 feet across a chasm and end your turn on the other side, you will not fall. God, I'm so sorry if this ASMR rogue guide is uncomfortable for you, but I'm also not sorry at all. Cognitive loophole is also absolutely insane. If you are currently being affected by a mental effect like fear or charm, you can spend your reaction the moment your turn ends to ignore that effect until the end of your next turn. Meaning if you're charmed by something, you can spend your reaction to not be charmed until the end of your next turn. And after that turn ends, guess what? You can use cognitive loophole again. You can even use this reaction if the mental effect stops you from using reactions. This is insane. The only time you can't use this is if you're suffering from an effect in which you critically failed the initial save. Dispelling Slice is okay. For 2 actions, you can make an attack against a flat-footed creature. If you hit them and deal sneak attack damage, you can actually make a counteract check against a single magical effect on that target, positive or negative. This counteract modifier is equal to your class DC minus 10. Good lord, rogues have insane level 16 feats. Perfect Distraction allows you to cast the spell Mislead in a non-magical way once every 10 minutes. If you are hidden, you can take the sneak action, and when you do, you leave an exact duplicate decoy of yourself behind. From then on, you can spend 1 action every round, just like with the spell, to have your decoy take some action, whether it be striding or attacking. Now, it cannot deal damage, but it can still trick enemies into thinking it's actually you. And whenever you take an action, you can roll deception for the enemies to think it was your decoy who took that action. It's very complicated. If you want to know more, check out the spell Mislead. This is effectively that spell, but non-magical. Compared to the other level 16 feats, Swift Illusion is kind of a letdown. As a reaction, if a foe ends their move action adjacent to you, you can make an acrobatics check against their reflex DC. If you succeed, you can either move yourself to any other space adjacent to them, or move them to any other space adjacent to you. Now this is good, as you can force the opponent into being flanked. If your fighter is 10 feet behind you and they walk up to you, you can succeed your acrobatics check and move the foe around behind you so it's now between you and the fighter. Is it useless? Not at all. It's good, but it's up against some stiff competition for better feats. Reconstruct the Scene is an investigator feat. It feels kind of weird to put it on a rogue. Effectively, you spend 1 minute analyzing a scene, and by taking in all the information, different marks on the floor, with the positioning of different spills in like a crime scene, you can actually recreate the entire thing. Now, it doesn't give you exact details, but it gives you clues and evidence and little details here and there up to the GM's discretion. Now, the craziest part about this is that it doesn't require any kind of roll. You just do this. It's a really good feat, and while it's up against some other really strong points, this is an amazing roleplay feat for the rogue. Again, though, it just feels more like an investigator feat. Granted, this did come out before the investigator. Holy cow, rogues have a ton of level 16 feats. If you have the Legendary Thief skill feat and the Loner Spell rogue feat, you can take Steal Spell, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You are able to roll thievery against the opponent's perception to steal a prepared or spontaneous spell slot from them. And you will always steal the highest level spell available to them, maxing out at 8th level spells. You have 1d4 rounds to cast it, otherwise it disappears. This is insanely powerful. Use this on a Lich, steal his Disintegrate, steal his Animate Dead. You are going to be able to do so much random crap with this, especially if you use it on the big bad end boss. Just steal their best spell. Your GM will hate you forever, and I want to watch. At level 18, Implausible Infiltration turns you into goo. If there is even a tiny hole in a wall that is 10 feet or thinner, for 2 actions, you can fit through it. There's no check here. You don't need to roll anything. You can just somehow squeeze through a 1-inch hole in the wall and appear on the other side. It does have the magical trait, so this is not a physical maneuver. You do magically kind of melt through it. It just seems kind of weird, and I don't know how I feel about it. Kind of makes me uncomfortable. Powerful Sneak is an awesome feat and may not seem that strong on paper. Effectively, you now have the option to change your sneak attack damage from precision to the same type of damage as your attack. So if you hit them with a dagger, you can turn that 4d6 precision damage into 4d6 piercing damage. Why is this important? Well, because a lot of monsters, namely anything gelatinous without an actual physical form, is immune to precision damage. This means that if you sneak attack a gelatinous cube, you're losing out on all 4d6 of your sneak attack damage. But if you have Powerful Sneak, you can turn it into piercing or bludgeoning or something that would work really well. So this is great. Precision damage is easily one of the most commonly resisted and immune damage types in the game, so being able to turn it into any other physical damage type is rad. Also important to think about is combining this with the magical Trickster feat, meaning if you deal damage with something like Produce Flame, you can turn your precision damage into fire damage. We also have Trickster's Ace. This one's really complicated in wording, but let me spell it out for you. Every single morning during daily preparations, you pick any spell of level 4 or lower from any spell casting tradition, even if you can't cast magic. The spell can't have a cost, and it can't take more than 10 minutes to cast. It also must be able to target you and only you. You can pick a spell that targets multiple creatures, but it will only affect you. You then pick a trigger, as if you had readied this spell with the ready action. During that day, if that trigger ever happens, the spell is automatically cast on you right then and there as a reaction, and you benefit from the effect. The most common use for this will likely be to pick a 4th level heal spell when you take damage. So the first time you take damage each day, you can instantly heal for 4d8 plus 32 hit points. I'm sure there are super creative ways you can use this to some insane effect, but it is almost 2 in the morning and I'm very tired. I can't think straight. Of course, the final feat in the APG is an expansion on the pull crap out of your bag feats. With this feat, you can now pull any piece of adventuring gear out of your bag whenever you want for 2 actions as often as you want. Also, 5 times per day, you can pull out any common item of level 12 or lower. If you're a level 20 character, you can pick a common item up to level 14. And remember that a common item is just any item not marked uncommon. So yeah, you just have anything you ever need forever now. Have fun. And if you pick this feat, I hate you. Alright, 3 level 20 feats. Then I can render this, then wait an hour while it renders, and then upload it, and make a thumbnail. Then I can go to bed, and this hour-and-a-half long video will be over. Hidden Paragon. Once per hour, if you successfully use stealth to hide behind cover, you turn invisible for 1 minute. No magical effect can reveal you. You are invisible for 1 minute, once per hour. You can literally go around a corner and vanish. They can still seek you to make you hidden with the seek action if they succeed, but yeah. Good luck. This is just a super easy get out of jail free card once per hour. You're never getting caught. Impossible Striker sounds kind of okay, but falls incredibly short. Basically, enemies no longer need to be flat-footed in order to sneak attack them. Cool. Basically a permanent plus 4d6 to all of your attacks. That's not amazing at level 20. And unfortunately, these attacks don't trigger debilitating strikes. If Impossible Striker inflicted debilitating strikes, even if they weren't flat-footed, this would be a great level 20 feat. But unfortunately, debilitating strikes requires the target to be flat-footed. Impossible Striker just lets you add your sneak attack damage, so those unfortunately are not the same thing, making Impossible Striker a much less impressive capstone feat. Reactive Distraction is awesome. If you took Perfect Distraction at level 16, you can take this feat, and as a reaction, if you are ever targeted by an effect or in the area of an area of effect attack, you can instantly activate perfect distraction, meaning you drop your decoy and make a sneak action up to half your speed away. This can get you out of the area of effect, and if you were originally being targeted by an attack, the attack now hits your decoy instead. This sort of functions as a once per 10 minutes, say, no, you don't get to hurt me this time. This is fantastic. Since most encounters, granted, I don't know about level 20 encounters, but a lot of encounters tend to last maybe 5 or 6 rounds tops, so being able to, 1 out of those 5 rounds, say, nah, that doesn't hit me, that's really powerful. I don't know if it's quite as good as Hidden Paragon, but it's a pretty close second. And that's it, guys. I'm not going to bore you with an outro, but I am going to say thank you to all of my patrons scrolling by my head, and thank you to all of the fantastic folks in the streams last week who donated to make this video happen. Normally these outros are longer, and I'd say, hey, like the video, subscribe to the channel to see more of this, and hey, tell me, do you like rogues? Do you hate rogues? Are you playing a rogue? Tell me all about it in the comments. Normally I'd say all of that, but I'm tired, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to say, thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Until next time, no nat ones.